most important key parts to this whole concept of how to overcome failure is to just reframe the test as practice. The reason why people fail, and they truly, truly fail, is because they just haven't adapted to the environment. They haven't experienced the environment whatsoever, or they never had another person coach them through what that environment's gonna look like, right? Like, fail first, test the test. Like, don't wait to take the test, like test the test. And then once you test the test, practice what breaks in the test. That's where you should be spending a majority of your time.
Emotions are a great motivator. Reflect on those emotions, let them in, but let them do what they need to do. The anger, the embarrassment, all those emotions that I said when I had to reflect have now turned into a motivation of, I will finish.
Right.
Failure is probably going to help more people than constantly succeeding. This failure now as a person can help family, can help friends, can help the people in the gym when they see, man, he did fail, but yet he's still going. Like he's not fazed by it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think more people are like, well, he failed, he's okay with it. What can I do?
What would you attempt if you couldn't fail? Or better yet, what would you attempt if you had the ability to handle any failure? In today's podcast episode, I got Coach Mark with me, and we are going to be going over how to overcome failure, specifically in fitness, but arguably it can work for weight loss, it can work for your life, it can work for any aspects that you desire. And if you understand how to navigate failure, you're going to win in a lot of areas. Mark, welcome back, man.
What's up, man?
So speaking of failures,
yeah, dude,
we were talking about this because you just experienced one critical one for you. You just took a massive challenge just recently. Yeah. I'd love to really go over that and unpack it on some of the lessons, because I think both of us are kind of addicted to this concept of failing because there's a lot of growth, obviously, but I want to build a framework around it.
Yeah, man.
So before we really dive into it, I wanted to share a story with the audience because I think it really summarizes the framework that we're about to cover. And it's a story. I feel like I'm talking about my basketball days, my heydays all the time. But anyways, we had a coach that was an actual coach. And I feel like most high school coaches, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of them are like students first that teach a little bit of sports. This one was an athlete that took a part-time as a teaching person, right? So he really knew his stuff. And one of the things he did differently that was a lot different from the coaches that I had in high school was we trained different scenarios. Like, one of the big things that he did was like, hey guys, this week we are going to be focusing on coming back from 30 points. So you guys are 30 points behind. We're halfway through the quarter and you guys have to win. If you guys don't win, you're going to run a mile. And then we were like, oh my gosh, why were you doing that? And we would train that. And then we would also train moments where it's like, hey, you guys are up by 30 points now. And now you got to keep that. How would you play? Or it was like, hey, all of you guys are in foul trouble, right? And if you foul, you're now down. You can only play with 4 players. And at the time, I'm like, what's the purpose of this? This is dumb. Can we just scrimmage, right? And fast forward to kind of that season, we ended up going undefeated. We ended up winning pretty much all of the games. He becomes the new varsity coach and so on and so forth. But I'm sharing this story because what that coach actually did was he put us into an environment where we were already failing in some capacity, whether we're 30 points down or we're in foul trouble, whatever that is. And we got used to it. And ironically, we got into those situations, we were down by 20 or 25, and then we knew how to catch up. Mm-hmm. Here's my problem with most people when they're training. They train like it's 0-0, but life doesn't work that way. And you just experienced your 50-miler. It doesn't work that way. Not every day you're coming in fresh. So if we were able to even train, like have that experience of like, okay, I need to train. How do I train when I'm falling apart here? Do you think you would have had an advantage, one, if you actually experienced some of that failures ahead of time?
Oh, yeah. I definitely think that if I would have conditioned myself to be uncomfortable more pre-race or in training,
Yeah.
I think that failure, I think it would have been a different way. Like, I think I would have been just a bit better prepared for the inevitable of something going wrong.
Right.
Like the cramps that happened. And you know what I mean? Like it just happened. There was nothing that I could have done. I did all of the normal protocols of like taking in salts, and somebody said mustard packet. So I had a mustard packet.
Well, first off, tell them what you did.
All right. So first off, the challenge was, hey, you're starting a mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going to be the challenge that I want to do? Like, I'm having fun mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
I just started, but a friend said, hey, let's do a 50-miler race. It's coming on up. And I was like, you know what? Like,
let's do it.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just see it. And so many people were talking about, dude, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those where it's like, it's going to be fun.
Exactly.
It's going to be 50 miles, man. Like, this is going to be not going to be a cakewalk, but I also thought that this was obtainable. Like, I wasn't going to have a hard time.
What was the time frame?
Time frame, there was cutoffs, and that's what I actually got. Was each aid station had a certain time cutoff from when we started, and it was an 8-hour race. Like, you had to get under 8 hours, 50 miles, 8 hours. 4,000 feet of elevation gain. Come to find out, insanely rocky, chunky terrain. But I missed my third aid station. I missed my time cap. That cap where you had to get under by 10 minutes, man.
Yeah.
So close.
Yeah.
So close.
So from the conception of the idea, how long did you actually?
So
was it like the next week? You're like, all right, we're doing it next week.
So I started the mountain biking. I got the bike, and I just wanted to start riding right away.
Okay.
In May of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very recent. I have raced BMX, but I was like 9 to like 11, 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very long time since I've been on a bike a lot, if that makes sense. Like, we have stationary fan bikes. Like, I've been on a bike maybe once every 3 years or something like that. But this was, I finally got a bike. We finally had enough money to buy a decent bike.
Yeah.
And I got it in May. And I would say that the friend that told me was maybe July.
Okay.
So
you had 3 months to train.
July,
2 months maybe.
July, August, September.
So 3 months.
And then 3.5 months. Yeah.
Right. So it just goes to the framework. At least you had some time. Some people,
I did have time, and I made it a point to train.
Yeah.
Like, we all know, we're coaches. We know that if we don't prepare and we just wing it, that's going to be bad. That's going to be bad news bears. Like, but I put in the time. Like, I made a semi-structured program.
Mm-hmm.
I, made sure that I was going out with people that were doing the race that would push me.
Yeah.
I did stuff that other people probably would have shied away. I was like, let's try to attack that hill. Let's try to go for those longer miles and stuff like that. Let's try to learn as much as I can about mountain biking. There's skill involved too. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those where it's like, get on the bike and start learning how to climb a certain way, learn how to descend a certain way, learn how to attack an obstacle, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yes, very short framework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really quick on this, because I think you already experienced this environment. I think we have micro failures in our classes, in our workouts, just in general. So I feel like that part, if you didn't have any of those parts, I don't know if you would have finished. You did 36 plus miles. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I just like fast forwarded. This is what Mark finished at, 36 miles. But granted, if you didn't experience prior smaller failures, I don't know if you would even got 20 or like 30.
No. Yeah.
Right. So
I think for us and the way that we train, not even the specifically like the program, but just the way we train, we're always in that hurt, that like that pain cave.
You understand that.
We understand that. And we understand okay, I might need to, I might need to try to push forward, or I might need to slow down and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So we're always faced with failure. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can almost say I fail inside fitness
Yeah.
at least 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
Also
you,
the
you set a
injuries.
goal or a pace, or I want to get 20 of these thrusters in one go, and then all of a sudden you're like
Mhm.
sucking air and you're like, oh man, I only got 12.
Yeah.
So we are definitely setting ourselves up for that.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also just a different kind of realm. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think that we're just conditioned for that.
Yeah.
And then when things get even tougher than that, it's like, okay, we know kind of where to start to put our energy
Yeah.
in places.
And what people don't know is you're actually failing throughout this whole process, because a lot of times you come in and like, dude, my hips are bad,
Oh
my
yeah.
knees are hurting. How do I fix this? Like those are some. That's you training 30 points behind. That's what
Oh,
I
yeah.
want. I want the athletes. If you're watching this, like the importance of getting into these environments where it's not in your favor. You know, a lot of times as you're training, you might just even stop. Most people just stop. They're like, my hips are bad, I quit. Right? But that didn't bother you.
No.
Why did not that? Why didn't bother you?
Because you have to go through that. You have to go through that process. Like inside your training, you want to hit those walls. You want to see what the body's capable of even before the race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, that's why I attacked certain things that might have been hard. There's a hill that we call it's called Lawnmower.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a nasty climb. It is your highest gear, and you are just pedal crazy going up this hill. And every time I did not want to go up this thing.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to. I know how bad it hurts. I did it one time,
Yeah.
but I knew that it was like, all right, if these guys are going for it, I'm gonna go for it. I know I need it, and I know I need to figure out like there's probably gonna be a climb this bad during the race.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or
You're
it's
pre-experiencing
yeah,
it.
you're pre-experiencing it. Or like, I mean, to be honest, when you train for endurance, you need to build the volume, and you need to
Yeah.
break while you're building that volume.
Yeah.
I
to
can't
see.
just go out and be like, well, I rode 10 miles, but I can do 50. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like you need to build up those miles.
Yeah.
You need to build up that and condition yourself to be like, all right, that was hard. I stopped here, or I cramped here, or the bike, did something. There was a
Yeah.
couple of times where I had some mechanical issues with the bike. You need to know those, because that could be a failure.
Yeah.
Your bike breaks and you're in the middle of nowhere. Now you have to hike your bike
Right.
to where you can get some support.
I love it.
So
So let's go through some indicators, because we
Okay.
were talking about prior to this, failure is like an environment. It's like
Mhm.
it could be like the desert, it could be Antarctica. Success has its own environment too. Like what's that like? If you were like, some of the indicators for the desert is like, oh, it's the temperature.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be sweating your face off. The lights are really bright. If you look on the ground, there's not a lot of green. Like those are some indicators that we're in the desert.
Yeah.
What are some of the indicators, if you were like just to personally talk about it, what are some indicators that you're failing?
I think the first indicator was the fact that I was dead last in my group of the 50 milers.
Yeah.
So there were multiple different distances for this race.
Yeah.
And we started as the 50, we started the earliest. But very quickly, maybe under 10 miles in, I realized I was the last person inside that group.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that was definitely a condition
One
of
of the small indicators.
a small indicator of, things are a little bit
Wow.
harder than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the indicators. How about like physically throughout your training? What parts are like
Throughout training or the
indicators? Yeah.
race?
Just throughout training. Like
Um,
some indicators.
Some indicators were obviously like I'm not an endurance athlete and I'm trying to make myself an endurance athlete, but
Mhm.
some of the indicators were just the overall breathing, the overall
Yeah.
conditioning for long efforts, multiple hour efforts.
Yeah.
I noticed that like, all right, this is going to be something I need to physically work on because I am previously known for a short, fast, athlete. And now I'm trying to attack a realm where that's just not my forte.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I get out of breath very easily. My heart rate skyrockets. And if that heart rate stays up too high for too long,
you can't sustain it.
Yeah, it's inevitable. You're going to bonk somewhere.
Yeah. Like I wanted to let people know that when you're physically failing in fitness, there's just a lot of physical indicators.
Oh yeah.
Right. Some of it's the heart rate. Like I can't sustain this. You're freaking out. A second part for me is my injuries, but they're not like full on injuries yet. They're micro injuries.
Oh yeah. They're aches and pains.
They're aches and pains. And a lot of times it's just one part. It's like, why is my right leg shorter than my left leg? So that's actually a mini failure. And some people just ignore that. But then a trained eye and a trained trainer would be like, oh man, my mechanics are off.
Yeah.
What am I doing with my strides? Am I loading one side? Like, what are some of those things that I can prevent? Like, those are some mini indicators. And another one can be cramps, or another one can be like, I couldn't feel my body the rest of the day yesterday or the next day of training. I need to improve somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. So like, those are indicators you're actually going the right path. But what most people will use those indicators to quit. Right. So it's like, I think that's why it's so important to just know the environment you're in. Just like, if this is the first time you went to the desert, you've been in like a Antarctica type of person where it's just really, really cold. You go in and you have a coat on, it's like, you're not failing. You just don't know what that environment feels like. Just take the coat off and drink a lot of water. And it's just vice versa, the same way, a desert person going into Antarctica. The reason why people fail, and they truly, truly fail, is because they just haven't adapted to the environment. One, they haven't experienced the environment whatsoever, or they never had another person coach them through what that environment's going to look like. Yep. So the key part to this, and guys, like Mark thinks he failed at 36 miles, but this guy squats a lot. He deadlifts a lot. He's a power athlete. Most power athletes can't even run a mile without having a heart attack. Mark did 36. Okay. So I want to just like break that apart. One, like people don't understand that concept. He's breaking laws, which is like an indicator that I feel like someone's really successful. But then in your mind, you want to do the 50.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so the start of the journey is not actually the biking. The start of this journey of pushing in, or actually not pushing past, pushing into stuff that I'm just not typically accustomed to, was the half marathon in the beginning of the year. Like, I am not a runner. I thought that 800 meters was like that's endurance. That's like, that's long distance. Like that 800 meters was a long distance run. Yeah. And then I ended up running, like I trained for it, and I ended up running the half marathon. So this was just another step in the evolution of Mark stepping into the endurance zone. Was 50-miler bike race. Right. Now, again, let's just not say it's a step. That was a jump. That was a jump. It was a jump. But it was, again, I think what you've said before, like, we have gotten accustomed to those micro failures throughout. And so I was like, you know what? I got this. Like, I can handle this. We're going to see where it is. But we also talk about, me and you and Corey and some other people, we talk about doing these hard things, these Mesogis. Yeah. And I wouldn't consider this like a straight Mesogi, but I will say, now that I look back at it, this was definitely a 50-50 shot. Yeah. Like, hindsight 2020. Yeah, there was a very thin line of succeeding and DNFing, which, like, I didn't finish. I got that time cap. So
what's a Mesogi?
Like, basically the challenge of challenges for yourself. Right. Like, it doesn't need to be, you running, 1,000 miles in the desert or something like that, but it just needs to be a super hard challenge for you yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about it a long time, because they're like, what? Now the audience is like, what the heck is a Mesogi? But it really is just doing something so hard for one day that the rest of your year is easy.
Oh, yeah.
right? And that hard is going to be different for everybody, but we had some parameters. One of the parameters was 50-50.
Yeah.
Like if you have 100% chance of succeeding, it's not a Mesogi.
No.
Like that's training.
Yeah.
Right. And I wouldn't even arguably probably say it's not even training. Training is like 80-20. I feel like there's going to be 20% that you might fail inside training.
And that's why I first did this 50 and thinking about this 50. It's not a Mesogi. Like if I train for it, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And
it was a little different ball
it's game. A little different ball game now.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So it's a different environment.
Yeah.
So, and then another part of that Mesogi is you can't die. Like that was one of the things that we were talking about, like, don't like put your life into danger.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like Mark's been training for long endurance. He's not coming out of the blue and he's like, I just deadlifted my max and this is the first time I'm doing endurance.
Yeah.
That's just careless, right?
Yeah.
And then the last part of it was like it's a journey for you. So so we always recommend not promoting it in your social media a bunch of times. Like it's an internal win for the most part. So a lot of our Mesogis no one sees.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I think it's what makes you guys I think that's what makes you guys even more beautiful because no one knows what you guys do.
Yeah.
Madison is arguably probably doing her Mesogi right now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like it's so cool to see that. I'm excited to see if she's either successful or she's failing and she sees, and hopefully maybe she'll use this concept if she goes through it as well.
Yeah.
Right. So I had to break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we at? So the first one was understanding the environment.
Yeah.
Right. The second component to our training when I was playing basketball was training in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know what it's going to feel like, how are you able to essentially, like, how did you train those environments? Or were you just like, I'm just going to nonchalantly just ride my bike every hour or 1 hour every single day?
Yeah. Like, obviously we all know having like a structured program is something that is going to set you up for succeeding.
Right.
But in mountain biking, there's so many different facets, just like when we do like people train for CrossFit, there's so many different facets that you need to get good at or comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And there were a few talks with other people that have done the race before. Hey, you need to do some elevation training.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big one, was elevation training.
I think you only did that once out of the 32.
I did elevation training a little bit, but it was sprinkled in. Now, again, I don't need to be training at elevation for every ride.
Right.
But I do need to definitely get exposure because here we're only at like 2,000 feet elevation. Yeah. And even up at our rides up at Mount Charleston, you're only at,
2,000, 4,000?
No, you can get up to like 7. I think we trained at like 7,000 feet, but the race started there at 8,000. Meaning the race started and you gain about 4,000 feet of elevation. So you're up there now with very thin air. And if you're not used to it, even when we got there, if we're talking about like prepping for the conditions and making sure that we're actually putting that into practice, I had to go for a pre-ride on at least some of the course. And I only did, I think, 6 miles. Yeah. But I had to just get my lungs used to it, get accustomed to being up there, making sure that, I'm not starting the race up at that elevation and then sucking wind for the first mile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I needed to prepare for that. Looking back at it,
probably should have done a little bit more.
I could have done more. Well, and hindsight 2020, you're always know you could do more, especially if it's something where there is that failure. You look back and you're like, I could have done more. I could have done this. I could have. Yeah. But I look back at that now is the framework. So if we talk about the 3 months or 3.5 months of training, I could have had some more what we call seat time or saddle time. Yeah. Just in the bike, getting to be better skillfully on the bike. Yeah. I mean, there was a guy that passed me that was doing he did the 35 miler, the shorter distance, and we go through some of the same trail. and he passed me going uphill on a very chunky section. And I swear to you, Royce, it looked like he skipped off of the rocks. That's how skilled he was and fast. He literally just pop, 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 and was gone. And I'm sitting there
gasping for air.
You know, every rock feels like it's the massive boulder. I feel like I'm barely getting up and over. I'm one side of the trail to the other, and this guy literally.
You can tell he's been doing.
Oh,
he's been practicing.
Yeah, and again, like I understand there's a little things that are different. This guy probably weighed like 120 pounds.
Right.
Like he's a skinny guy, and I'm 195 pounds, 200. So yeah, I understand that, but I quickly realized that
there's some skills on this too.
There's some skills and also just overall just time that these guys have put into mountain biking that I haven't yet.
Exactly.
And that was a big eye opener. I mean, especially how being the last person in a 50-mile race when there are all types of athletes that are beating me. There are guys in their 70s that are blowing by me. And there's also, you know, there was a lady that was probably maybe in her 50s that she's like, oh, I've been riding for the past 30 years. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And she gave me encouragement and was talking to me for a little bit during that first part of the race.
Yeah.
And it looked like she was just on a Sunday stroll.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I'm starting to realize that I'm hurting. Like this is way harder than I thought it was going to be, stuff like that.
I can relate. So I did a triathlon a while back. This was pre-endurance Royce. This was CrossFit Royce, so I'm heavy lifting, right? But I had a month to train because the deal was, if I get you to lose 40 pounds, I'll go ahead and do that triathlon with you. And,
I like that.
He loses it with a month left, and I'm panicking. Okay, I was like, I don't even know how to swim. So for the next 30 days, all I trained for was the swim. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just don't want to die on the swim. But we go into the race, and the hardest part wasn't the swim, of course, because I'm training that. The hardest part was the bike. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't put any time on the bike. I was like, it's just riding a bike. But then there's gears on the bike, there's grades, you know, and I did practice, but I practiced on flat ground, right? So it's like you go into that race and then, yes, we accomplish the swim part, but then you get to the bike and you think you're confident and you get slapped in the face.
Yeah.
So one of the concepts that I learned, one of the big lessons that I learned was like, test the test. Mm-hmm. How can I test the test, see what breaks first, right? So it's like, I mean, do it in a controlled environment where if I'm going to swim, I'm not going to swim free water by myself. I'm going to go swim at EOS, do that, but then hop on a bike and then do that miles on the bike. Mm-hmm. I never did that. I always like partitioned it, thinking that I'd be ready for it, which is awful, by the way. So like, I think that's just like one of the big concepts is when you're training, I think it's important to train to failure as fast as you possibly can. When we're taught in school, we're like, there's something I'm going to tell you guys a secret. In college, we got the test first. Like we had something called a test bank. I'm not going to tell you what fraternity I was in, but we had a massive test bank. But some people would just memorize the test. What I would do is I would get the test, I would erase all of the answers, and I would take the test. And then I would see what part of the test did I miss, and I would spend 2 more hours extra on that section. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm like, oh, it's this particular compound. I have no idea. Let's go back to chapter 9. Let's really absorb it. And then I would retake the test. Mm-hmm. And then the answer, I feel like most people, when they study or they train, they just train like one segment at a time. But what if you're already good at that segment and you're wasting all this time practicing that what you're good at, where you should be practicing a majority of the time where you suck at? Mm-hmm. Right? Are you looking to jumpstart your journey or just excited to take on a new challenge? Over the next 30 days, we are running our first ever cohort designed to get you easy wins in your fitness goals. Over the next 30 days, the team and I are going to be providing nutritional guidance, fitness support, and best of all, you're going to be surrounded with like-minded people that are looking to grow. If you've been looking to jumpstart your fitness, create new habits, start your weight loss goal, or maybe your workout's just been a little bit stale and you want to challenge yourself, this cohort is going to be for you. Now, if you're ready to take on this challenge, go to our show notes below, sign up to our free Move 30 challenge, and I'll see you guys there. Now, back to the show. Peace. Right? So like that was one of the biggest learning curves for me in just terms of failures that now I take onto everything. So any big test that I do, you'll see me attempt. You're like, what did you do yesterday? I just did 1,000x burpees. Primarily they're like, why did you do 1,056? It was like, oh, that was a world record. Yeah. I wanted to see where it would break, right? It broke at like 800 for me. I had like a massive ab cramp, but I do that for essentially all of my Mesogis almost. Right, at least the ones that I want to train for. Sometimes Mesogi. No, actually, I take that back. The marathon Mesogi that we did a while back, I didn't really train for it. So, but
and you were wrecked after that.
I was wrecked. I was really wrecked. Yeah. So, but again, like I think it's important if you were gonna train the environment. I think you should train it almost at its full capacity. Granted, you don't have like a heart issue or like you're partly conditioned. Maybe set some guardrails. You're like, you know what? I have 2 hours. I'm just gonna get as far as I can. Yeah. And what if you break at an hour? Then you're like, oh gosh, I need to change the game up. I'm breaking at an hour. This is a 5-hour race. Oh yeah. Right. This is an 8-hour race. So it's like, I think you should be failing quicker. And be very curious of what breaks, and then that's where like the first attempt.
I think for me, and I had conversations with some of the guys that I did the race with, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses and things we need to work on. His biggest thing was, I just need to do more climbing, elevation and climbing. And I kept on saying in my head, and again, you don't want to go, like, it's not safe to go ride out in the desert by yourself. Number one, right? There's a lot of different scenarios where you can get hurt and just not make it back kind of thing. But I was always like, I need to do longer rides. Right. And I kept saying like, hey, when I did the half marathon, it was under 3 hours, but that was the longest endurance thing that I've ever done in my entire life. So 3 hours, that's not horrible. Yeah. But then all said and done, you double it. That's what
changes the game.
It changes the game. And so my thing of doing that pre-test, I should have tried to get longer hours. And that's what I was trying to focus on was, all right, I've gone 2 hours. I've gone 3 hours. I've gone 4 hours. During the race, even my 36 miles that I accomplished was 6 hours. Yeah. I still had 15 more miles and also another 2 hours or hour and a half to try to complete it. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, even though I did PR on my mileage and my length of time, I should have tested myself for longer periods of time. Yeah. Because it's different. You can literally add in another hour and then that's when things start.
Things start breaking down.
Yeah. And again, they did. That's, I mean, partly of the reason why I didn't make that time cap and I was 10 minutes behind. If I didn't cramp, I cramped. And if I didn't cramp.
What part of your muscle cramped?
So, and that's the crazy thing. There was so much, my quads cramped. So like the teardrop, the VMO, that cramp started cramping first. And I cramped a little bit on my half marathon, but I was fine. Yeah. I had like this whatever cramp cream. I threw it on. I was fine for my half marathon. I still had another one of those packets. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe I just need more salt. And again, you get these little like jolts of like the cramp coming on and
it gets bad.
Well, and it was just like, okay, let's pop some salts. And then it got a little bit worse. So then it was like, okay, let's just get off the bike and maybe walk the bike because walking is just so much of a different stimulus than pedaling on the bike. Yeah. So it's like, okay, get off and walk just for a little bit. Yeah. So get off, walk, feel fine. Let's go again. And then the next time a cramp came on, it was like, okay, get off and walk again. Yeah. Then it was, let's go and walk again.
Yeah.
Then let's walk again. And then the cramps got so bad that I fell off the bike twice because I could not bend my leg. I literally just quad, hamstring, calf, all cramped all at the same time. And it was just timber. Like I just fell on the trail and like looking at my leg, screaming basically because I couldn't straighten out my leg. And that sucked out 10, 15 minutes of just laying there trying to almost will myself to like, yes, your body's cramping, but keep going. And that's what I kept telling myself. It's like, just try to keep moving. And and again, like I tried everything.
Right.
Salts, mustard packets, the cramp cream, you know, hitting my legs to try to get them to relax. It just got to a point where every hill that was there, I couldn't ride it. If it was flat, if it was downhill, I could manage the cramping. But the moment there was any hill, I was like, I have to get off the bike. I have to walk it.
So knowing that, what would you train differently going into it now?
Oh, I mean, training differently now would obviously seat time. You got to get more saddle time.
So you just like go into your calendar. It's like, okay, I'm going to accumulate X amount.
Oh, for sure. Time. Well, and again, I'm fast forward. Let's spoil it, but fast forward. I will do this race again. I will do this 50-miler race again. But it's getting from now until then for a whole year. I'm going to be riding. I'm going to be training, more climbing, more
grades.
Yeah. More grades, more, technical, what we call technical climbing, more chunky rocks. But also I need to be training my fueling better. I need to
learn how to fuel for longer.
Yeah, fuel for longer. I need to go for longer rides. I guarantee you I'm going to be doing multiple 50-milers before this next 50-miler race again.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Because I want to test myself. I want to see what breaks.
What pace do I need to have?
Yeah.
To
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest. Like I was the last person. I wasn't really concerned about that. I didn't care about that as long as I finished. But now that I know I was the last person and I still didn't finish, I need to up my pace.
Right.
I need to be more uncomfortable during the race instead of just keep moving.
Yeah.
Because just keep moving didn't happen. You know what I mean? There was things that broke down that just keep moving didn't work.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
I'm reflecting back on my 12-hour Murphs. I did a 12-hour one. And the way I trained for that was I would do 2 hours in the morning, do all of my work stuff, and then I'll train in your class. And I was like, I just need to make sure I can handle the volume.
Yeah.
Can my body move for at least 4 hours? Because if I can't move for 4 hours, then I'm in trouble, right? So it's like there's different ways to test that out. And here's one thing, another big lesson that we just hammered over. This is also what breaks my heart. People think when they take their first nutrition challenge that that's the actual test. But that first test is actually practice in disguise. So Mark's first test was that 50-mile attempt, but that was just practice.
Yeah.
The conversation that's happening in Mark's head is so evolved over time. This is where it becomes so valuable. Like you need to start thinking that your first test is just practice. Your first weight loss challenge is just practice. We could probably look at all of our successful athletes that successfully accomplished the 12 weeks. I guarantee you that their challenge, the ones that were successful, that wasn't their first time.
Yeah.
That might have been their second or third time, right? And there are a select few that have done it the first time. But it's interesting. If I could look back, we could pull up all of them, the successful ones, and then we'll ask them, how many challenges have you done? They're like, oh, dude, I've done at least like 4 or 5.
Even for me, when I did the 12-week challenge, it's not my first challenge.
Yeah.
I failed multiple times
Challenges
with
first.
nutrition challenges before that.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so why was I successful? I mean, even the people that are doing their very first, like, say, nutrition challenge and they're succeeding, I think it's that first 2 weeks that was the test.
Yeah.
Because that first 2 weeks is rough, especially when you go from eating like a, whatever.
ultra processed foods.
Yeah,
every
like
single day.
you're just eating like a jerk, and then
Yeah.
you go into eating relatively clean, but yet just small little increments.
Yeah.
I think that's right there is the test of, can I still go through it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. And then you failed so many challenges prior to that. You're using that experience. You're like, oh, I normally quit right
Mhm.
here. Like I normally quit because I don't have enough time. So you start subconsciously like improving. Like
Yeah.
we're just natured to improve. So if you are taking on a challenge and you're losing right now, that challenge that you're doing is just practice. And that is one of the most important key parts to this whole concept of how to overcome failure is to just reframe the test as practice,
Mhm.
which is what we're doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what is happening for me. This
Mhm.
first race, this is my very first mountain bike race.
Yeah.
It's not like I've had any ones before. I just started mountain biking, in May. This now is all right. There's a few dots. Like this was a practice. I did the race. It was now a practice. I have a few dots, like when you have it on your phone, where like a sentence not finished, you have those few dots. That's what's happening right now. There's a few dots, but guess what? This is not the end result. Like there will be an exclamation point put on there, and I want people to know that this 50 miler was not an end point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. And honestly, even the next 50 miler that I do will not be an end point. There will be an exclamation point put on that
like,
of
sweet.
50 miler, exclamation point, done and done.
What's next?
What's next? Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And that's like the what's next, what's possible. That's actually the game. That's actually the end point.
Well, that's the journey.
Yeah.
Like that is the journey that is coming up, is what is next.
Yeah.
That the half marathon was not a endpoint. I was going to do something else.
Yeah.
That I still have plans for a triathlon. I want to do one of those.
Dude.
Yeah,
if I'm going to train for that, I'm going to train for it for at least a year. Right.
So, but and I mean, I have an end goal, and we've talked with one of our members, and she is her and her husband are very good bikers, road bike and mountain bikers. And there's a race called Leadville 100. It's 100 miles, and it's in Colorado, and we're talking about elevation. Like it's over 10,000 feet.
That one sounds.
It's crazy. It's gnarly. I mean, you are an experience. You actually have to get a lottery to get into that race.
Smart.
Yeah. And that is a goal of mine. That's a bucket list goal.
Yeah.
That is, okay, I will do this 50 miler, but one day I do want to try and go out for that 100, that Leadville 100.
I love it.
Yeah. It's all the process. It's all the journey. And again, what's after Leadville 100? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea. And I might be in my mid 40s by the time I do that.
That's so good. Yeah.
It just is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and probably when I'm 75, I might be one of those guys still doing the 50 milers that, that's a walk in a park. But it's still just another challenge. It's another step.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So that first one was understand the environment you're in.
Yeah.
We're on the second component. We're just training the environment. I wanted to add this because I think this is really important, is when you're training in these failure environments, I think it's important to also attach faith to this.
Yeah.
Because I don't think if I didn't have any faith with failure, I think I would just feel defeated the whole time. So it's important, and have that faith. When I say faith, it could be God for some people, right? It could be just like believing, like someone else believing in you, right? There's a coach, right? Or your family believing in you, but it's believing of uncertainty is what I really want this to really to cover. If you're just going through these massive bouts without that daily inspiration or daily hope, or like it makes it really difficult. Part of where, like, as I reflect back on a lot of my failures, it's because of that faith component for me. I take action regardless of the outcome. Like I just know I just know. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I feel the same way. Like we all talk it. The universe,
Yeah.
God, whoever you want to kind of say is there's always this I'm gonna be okay, if that makes sense. Like I can take these challenges on and I'm gonna be okay. Even if it's like a support system. You have your spouse or your family friend or your family or your friends that are like, hey, like you're gonna be okay. You gotta just try it. Like just gotta take that step kind of thing.
Yes.
And I mean for me it's faith. It's I know for me God's going to give me the power, the strength to
Yeah.
either succeed or fail.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like even when that race got hard and during the cramping time, it was okay, the realization of a failure is coming.
Yeah.
And it was more of I'm just kind of speaking out to God, be like, hey,
Yeah.
like let me keep going, like heal my legs or something like that. Because
Yeah.
we want to succeed and we ask the universe or God to be like, hey,
Yeah.
like help me succeed. But I feel that failure was more of or that the race was more of all right, I'm gonna make sure that the failure is okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure that you're okay with the failure. And I think
Yes.
that after the race was like, all right,
Yeah.
got you. I got you.
I wanted to cover that because
Yeah.
I think what people don't see is that concept of what we go through on a daily basis. Like just to sum it, failure without faith, you'll meet defeat. You'll definitely get defeated. But failure with faith is always fruitful, regardless if you fail or succeed.
Yeah.
Like I failed in so many of my challenges, but then I'm learning something. Like the burpee challenge, where it destroyed my back. I'm still gonna go for that one, by the way. I still want that one too. But then it goes to tell you, like, there's just you need to have that element. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, I've taken challenges without faith, and I'm normally just quitting.
Yeah.
But when I take challenges with faith, it's like it's almost like I'm amplified.
Yeah.
Into another level. It's
well,
crazy.
You have like I think without faith or without a support system, you are a defeatist. Like you. Yeah. Woe is me. I'm going to fail. Like, or I'm not going to be able to do this. And it's just almost like this give up. And to be honest, if you were at that place of like being a defeatist, you probably already have failed before you've taken the test.
100%.
And I think there's like, and if you look back at it, there's a duality on everything in life. But in this, there's a duality of failing and succeeding. And you got to take both sides. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there is still the succeed and I did good and what's going to come from that, but also the failure of okay, I failed, but what did I learn? What's going to come from that? Yeah. And I go back to like I think this failure is going to help more people than the success would have. So I think more people, especially in our gym and in our kind of group, is there's going to be more people that say, all right, he did fail, but it's not like it stopped him. It's not like I'm woe is me and I'm not showing up to the gym and I'm not defeated, but it's like, okay, I failed. It's not over yet, but I failed.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the third one here.
All right. Let's
the final one. How to really like understand this environment, because once you fail, I think there's a protocol. We use an acronym for us to remember it, and we'll go over it. But to essentially like take what you've learned, right, from the losses, and then use those losses to start living it, like living those lessons all of a sudden. So let's talk about that framework that we use, especially. You've called it something else. I just call it just reflection. But you called it, what did you call it last time?
It's a AAR, After Action Report.
Right. And it's very similar to the acronym we created for the most part. But what was the F?
The F was what were the emotions that you felt when failing?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And why is that why was that so important, do you think?
You got to understand what motions, like you have to accept all of those, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When I finished, or when I got that DNF, when I showed up to that aid station and they had that, like, I know it's probably hard, but they had to tell me, hey, you're not going to be able to go on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to have to stop. So many emotions rushed. Like, I was quiet. I was sad for a second.
Yeah.
Then I was loud and I was angry. Might have said a few choice words.
Shame was a little in
well,
there.
yeah,
Guilt.
and then as that time built, there's shame, guilt, embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I failed other people too.
Right.
Not even failed myself, but like failed other people, especially people that supported me. There was a lot of people from the gym, from family, from friends that supported me in some way that I was like, oh my God, I just let them down.
Yeah.
And I think if you cannot grasp and accept those feelings, I don't think you can move forward.
Yeah. If you dislike that feeling so much, you're never going to attempt it again.
Well, yeah, you can't succeed if
you're like, I don't want that feeling anymore, right? And I think I've been guilty of it for a while. Frustration was my biggest point, right? So it's like, if I didn't understand and accept frustration for what it was, then I would stop doing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I had to reframe it. Frustration, like the thing that I say all the time, wherever there's frustration, there's profit. Mm-hmm. Profit meaning it could be monetarily, it could be like a lesson learned, it could be time back, it could be relationships improving. That's what it meant to me now. So now that I've reframed frustration, I'm more willing to accept. In fact, I'm like, I gravitate towards it. Yeah. Let's go through it. If I get frustration, there's going to be some massive wins, right? Something that you said, we were driving and you were like, man, I felt like I failed you. In fact, you inspired me. Like, that's what people don't understand. In your head, you're going to say something, but I'm like, dang, dude, he's going for something that his body's not equipped for. What am I even doing here? Yeah. I need to go harder on my business. I need to go harder on my world records. I need to go harder in my relationships. Right. So it's like, understand that just as a therapeutic thing. Like, you did inspire me. You didn't let me down. Mm-hmm. Right, dude. That's actually what I want you to experience, because I feel alone experiencing it all the time. Yeah. And I'm also excited for whatever Madison does. Yeah. She might not know it yet, but when whether she succeeds, it's weird because I kind of want her to fail. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. Well, yeah. But I want her to fail because I want her to just like become this superhuman being, right? And then take that next and be like, I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna do a marathon now. Yeah, right. I think that's it sounds weird, but
we want growth. Like we want growth. Mm-hmm. The moment I've started here, I've grown so much mentally and emotionally. Right. In my own life, I've pushed that boundary. I've failed. And you've even seen it. We've had conversations about it. Yeah. Hard conversations too at times. And it's that like mental and emotional growth that now you almost want that for somebody else. Yeah. You don't want them to fail because obviously
it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, it hurts a little bit. It does. Mm-hmm. But yet you know that it's also necessary at the same time.
Yeah. And it's crazy growth. It's not like a little growth. I think there's very tiny growth in success. It's 10x, 100x in failures.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Yeah. Succeeding gives you that little bump. That little like
nice job.
Yeah, like you get a little endorphins, you're like you feel good, you're pumped. And then maybe a week goes by and
it's gone.
It's gone. But the failure, and to be honest, like even my failure in this 50 miler is going to motivate me for an entire year.
Right. Yeah.
Like this is now going to be pushing me forward. Yeah. And that's the thing is like I know if I talk to any of the members or anybody that I felt like I let down, I guarantee you they're going to be like,
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about, dude? Like dude, you
Yeah.
crushed it, blah blah blah. And it's and I think that speaks volume. We think that we're looking outward,
Yeah.
but in most of the time it's all internal.
It's all internal.
Yeah, it's all internal.
And that's where your win is like, wait, these guys are already proud of me that I'm just attempting it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, that's just my ego saying if I wanted this world record or whatever, it's like, that's just for me. It's like, no, dude, I'm more inspired that like Kyler coming in with his torn Achilles. It just blows my mind. I'm like, dang, dude. So now, you know what happens is if I ever rupture my Achilles, I'm so thankful because now I'm going to be like, done. Yeah. I saw Kyler come in he came in the next day when he ruptured it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that, like we don't realize them training 30 points behind and still going for it is so inspiring, more than them like blowing people out by 30 points.
Well, even, I mean, me and Kyler had this conversation of reframing like just what our situation is. And I told him, I'm like, and I said, I was like, dude, I was like, I know you're going to come in and train. I know you're going to do this. Why don't you just be the most jacked upper body person since you can't train your legs?
His back is,
you know what I mean? Like I was like, you're just now going to be the most jacked upper body person in the gym.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is now he's taking that 1,000 steps more and he's doing
300 sit-ups.
Well, he's doing 300 sit-ups, 200 push-ups, 100 pull-ups every day.
He's doing Murph. He's on another planet.
And he's taking that little bit of reframe that me and him just naturally, organically started talking about, and he's like running with it. Yeah. But you look at like a person like Kyler, I mean, that's like a catastrophic thing. Like
a lot of people quit.
Yeah, you take out your Achilles, like you're going to be out for a while.
Yeah, most people get chunky.
Yeah,
he got shredded.
And now, well, he's
shredded already.
He's all shredded already. He's just now just a monster.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the first part to this. It's like, what is the feeling? And then essentially like reframe the feeling. Don't be afraid of it. Yeah. I mean, I think initially the first part is just accept it. And it took me a long time to be excited about it. Right? That might take years for you. And it still takes, I'm still constantly processing frustration, right? So it's like,
it's not going to never hurt.
It's always
going to hurt, but it's always, you're going to be able to handle it better when it does hurt.
100%. So that's the first part. What's the feeling? Yeah. What's the second part?
The second one.
So this is the A.
The A. This was what are the actions
these are pre-actions.
The pre-actions. Right? Yeah. What
are
the pre-actions that you took before?
Yeah. And we were kind of reflecting on yours. You were like, okay, I was doing my long distances. I was training 3 days a week. I'm conditioning myself just generally 1 hour out of the day. I did 1 elevation training prior to that, or 2 in the 90 days, right? Yeah. Like I only did 1 hour long workouts. Like you want to just in like a neutral perspective, just see what your actions were, and then just see it. Just look at it. I was like, oh man, okay, cool. And I think that's really important. Most people go into failure and then they don't reflect on what they did to fail, which is a bigger failure. Yeah. I think it's a much larger failure. I was like, no. You failed this challenge. Let's go back on like why you failed.
I think it's being honest with yourself too. Like you have to truly be honest with where the shortcomings were. Right. Like I felt that my training was going good. Yeah. I have to be honest with myself and start picking apart a lot of the pre-race stuff. Was, oh man, I could have done better at this. Yeah. I could have done better at that. I could have implemented this. I could have done this, blah, 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 blah. We can go through an entire list, but I also have to be honest with myself on I did not do certain things to the fullest extent.
Exactly.
And it's like, did that lead to a failure? 100%. Yeah. But I have to be okay with that. Right. And I think that's the accepting of that.
Yeah. And people are afraid to look at all their actions. But if you clearly look at your actions, it's not going to influence the result all the time. Let's just say you did everything great, but then some weird thing happened where it got really hot and you cramped up and you weren't prepared for that. That could happen too. Right. But I think it's just looking at it from an honest perspective and just seeing it for what it is. And then go into the third part to this.
Yeah. Well,
which is
even speaking on the second one is even if you feel like you're fully prepared. For me, during the race, mentally and emotionally, I would have gone until I broke something. Yeah. Or I would have passed out or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I would have even me cramping and falling off the bike, I still was in such a good headspace that I was like, I will keep going. If they told me, even if I missed the time cap at 10 minutes, even if they told me you can still go, we're going to let you, I would have gone. Yeah. Like mentally and emotionally,
you were prepared for it.
I was prepared for it.
Which is a win by itself,
which is
right?
a huge win. Yeah,
You're like,
it is.
Oh, this is a physical problem. This is not a mental problem.
Well, and it was out of my control. It was a time frame. If there was no time frame, I would have finished.
Wow.
100%. And I have no, like, being honest with myself, I have no doubt that finish line would have been achieved. Yeah. How it would have been achieved would have been a different story. Right. I might have walked, of it, the next 15 miles. I might have hurt something pretty bad. But
like have to rehydrate for an hour.
Well, yeah, I might have had to sit down for the next 30 minutes just to try to recover. But I would have finished. Mm-hmm. But the success was taken away because of something I couldn't control. Right. Like I could have gone, I could have tried to gone faster. I would have, you know what I mean? Like I would have tried to push the pace. But what would the outcome have been still if everything stayed the same? I would have probably cramped even earlier. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those where it's like, even though I was in such a good space, the failure still came, and it just is what it is. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get to the third one, which is I.
The I, right? The
improving, right?
Improving. So like, what would you implement and improve
for this next training cycle?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of athletes are the most missed one is reflecting on the past. Yeah. This one, most athletes have an idea that they can improve more, but sometimes when you don't reflect on the past, you're improving the wrong thing again. Mm-hmm. Which I think is like the biggest problem. It's like that's why you need all of these parts to work and to really understand. Like as we're processing this, you're like, it's not my mindset. No. My mindset's good. Yeah. Right? It's my pacing. I didn't make my time frame. Yeah. I just needed to increase my pace by an extra minute on each mile or an extra 30 seconds on each mile. Yeah. Right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to improve my pacing for an hour and then just practice this pace so I can withstand it. Mm-hmm. Right? Instead of like, if you didn't reflect on that, the actions in the past and then like where you failed, you just been like, I'm just going to bike more, but you're going to experience the same problem again.
Yeah. Well, and I think that when you think about improving, there's three different aspects in my opinion. You got your physical, you have your emotional and your mental. And as coaches, as people that are physically active 6 out of the 7 days a week, you kind of almost put the physical on the back burner and you really work on that mental and emotional. Right. Well, guess what? I now know that the next time, this next season of training, I need to work on the physical. Right. The mental and emotional, I still need to work on, but those were okay. Now I got a huge realization that, all right, the physical needs to be worked on even more.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I just like, in terms of when we have the weight loss clients that are coming in, when they fail, they don't do any of the reflection. They just think they should just go to the next challenge. Yeah. But sometimes where they fail is like something so minuscule. And a lot of times they just bypass it. It's the time frame. They're forcing too much. Yeah. Right? They're like, or they're just trying to put too much on their plate and then they just don't even recognize that was the area of opportunity.
Yeah, it's recognizing it's just what you said. It's recognizing the area that you might not be aware of if you don't reflect. Right. If you don't go through this process of the F, of the I, of the A, stuff like that, like
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those where it's like, oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't reflect, I now can't go through
Yeah.
on the implementation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
See,
good. I like that.
I want to bring an example really quick because there was a client that was like, I'm just not getting my workouts in. I was like, what time are you working out? She was like, I'm trying to do it at the end of work. It's like 7 p.m. She's an executive.
Yeah.
And I was like, the workout's not the problem here. You know? And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, at 12 o'clock, how many fires do you have to put away? And she's like, all of my fires start at 12. And I was like, how many of those fires do you control? I was like, none of those. I control an executive. Right. So it's like, the problem is not the workout. The problem is the time.
Mhm.
Like, can you work out at 5 a.m.? She was like, no, I never thought of that. It's like, what if you just did that? And then we did this flip flop, and then bam, they started losing 2 pounds a week again.
Yeah.
Primarily because they think the problem is the workout. They're not getting the workout in, but the problem was the time.
Yeah.
And this can be in so many different areas in your life. And I want like the audience to understand that what's obvious to you might be the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so important to have another perspective. That's why it's so great to have coaches.
Yeah.
If you don't have coaches, read books, listen to podcasts like this, you're probably like, oh man, it isn't the workout. It's my time.
Well, I've had, I mean, for another example, I've had a nutrition client
Yeah.
that still made progress,
Mhm.
still did something and succeeded, failed in others.
Yeah.
Other perspectives of like, I didn't lose this amount of weight or I didn't do this.
Yeah.
And we had a talk and we had to reflect of what's going on. It's like, well, you did eat really well.
Yeah.
You exercised when I wanted you to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started going through the list. And one thing that popped in my head is what one of our other coaches, James, talks about.
Yeah.
It's like, realize how many holidays we have.
Right.
All those days where it's like, I'll fudge today. I'll do this.
It's like
I'll do that.
33% or
yeah,
more.
it's something crazy. And we just
Yep.
started talking about it. And it was like, well, you started your challenge in August.
Right.
And you now are going into holiday season. And it's
Mhm.
hard to stay on track. But that was never something that we even thought about until it was, oh, man, well, you had a quinceañera. You had also another birthday for somebody else. Oh, you also had Thanksgiving, but you had Halloween too before that. And oh man, your kid has had candy in the house and it's one of those where it's like, oh.
Yeah. I'll even have scenarios where they're like, Royce, I didn't get any workouts in, but my nutrition was good and all of that, but I failed you. I was like, well, let's hop on the scale, lose 3 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, what's happening? You know, and it's like just because you didn't get that workout in doesn't necessarily even mean you failed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you even like had this level of clean eating without exercise? And it just opens their mind. Like sometimes when they're experiencing that failure, they're actually succeeding in an entire like a magical way. They're like, oh my gosh, I've been working out to try to lose weight, and what I should have been doing was really refining my nutritional habits, and I could have sustained this for much longer times.
Oh yeah.
And you're just like, and that's the proper way to really reflect as a whole and not just be stuck in avoiding the feeling entirely.
Yeah.
Right? Because the feeling could have brought them into like, dude, actually you lost 3 pounds, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like those are my biggest wins with my clients a lot of times when they have a life that happens as a parent or as an executive.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've all had those epiphanies of it's no longer a failure. I mean, one of my ladies, she wanted to get down to a certain number. She was still like 10, 15 pounds off of that number, which is concerning.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, where we looked and it's like, well, you went from a dress size of a 15 down to like an 8 or something like that. I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that. I've been buying all new clothes this entire time.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the weight wasn't necessarily the thing. Like you were focusing on the weight, but where the real success came from was the dress size, the overall just
your look, how you feel.
The look and how you feel was drastically changed.
Yeah.
So it's all like, all right, well, where's the silver linings and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just had a client that came back from Japan, and he thought he was going to gain like 10 pounds. He actually lost. You know who he is.
Yeah.
But he actually lost like 5 to 10 pounds,
Oh,
and he got
wow.
even leaner, and he thought he was going to lose all his strength. And actually, when he came back strong.
Yeah,
He's like, dude,
nothing.
I feel strong. And the epiphany for him was like, oh my gosh, this building muscle mass is more important than me just sweating my face off every single day.
Yeah.
Right. So like that even created even more affirmation for him that weight and strength training is actually a big component. And now he enjoys it even more because he's like, whoa, normally I go to vacation and I gain weight. I lost weight because I had so much more strength and muscle.
Yeah.
And people look at him like, he's gotten strong.
Oh, he's gotten strong.
You're like,
and
whoa, what are you
he's
lifting?
leaned out so much. It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's, again, that's why it's so important, because he's experiencing his imaginary failure, but in reality, it's actually success.
Oh, yeah.
Which is unreal.
Well,
to
I
even
mean,
flip-flop.
If I were to, again, like to reflect on the race, yes, okay, I DNF'd. That was my main goal, was do the race. I don't need to win it. I don't need to come top 10. I don't even need to come top whatever. How many guys were like top 100? I think we were like 200 and something people just for the 50 miler. Silver lining, I PR'd by what? 17 miles. I PR'd my longest ride. I also PR'd my longest time of doing endurance by a whole 2 hours.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and people were like, dude, you still got 36 miles in 6 hours.
Yeah.
You would have completed the 35-mile loop.
No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have finished that.
That's like the whole shooting for the stars, land in the moon kind of concept.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's all like, okay, taking a look back on the things that we could improve on almost gives you that like epiphany of, oh, I actually did succeed on things. Like I was so focused on just finishing the 50 miler, I didn't think about.
No one does, yeah.
I did I did something crazy, you know what I mean? Like,
you know what would have been fun if we took your VO2 max, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your
before
A1C
and after?
levels.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
100%.
like I guarantee you it would have probably changed significantly after the test. But then it's like, that's why I'm a huge fan of chasing for performance, because almost all those other things start to take care of itself.
Oh yeah. Well, right? I mean, even implementing from a fuel standpoint, I started eating so much more, and I was doing this and I was doing that, and I was taking in calories. But what was crazy about that is I was maintaining or even losing weight because I was chasing the performance. I wasn't chasing, a number or something. Like I knew that for me as a person of the way I'm built, I'm not going to get down to 170 or 165 to go race this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I would literally wither away.
Yeah.
But I found out just by chasing the performance, there was a lot of other things that, I mean, now I do CrossFit workouts and actually have a endurance base. I have a base of aerobic base now. So it's kind of cool.
You doing 3 hours of biking, 30 minutes seem like nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So that is the advantage, guys, to like really not being afraid to fail, because of all of those back end things that we don't even see. I don't have to check my A1C levels. I don't have to check my blood pressure. I don't have to do any of those things because I'm not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm attempting all of these grand goals that require your physical body to adapt and change in so many different ways, even your habits in general.
Yeah.
Like I got to go race at 6. I guess I'm going to sleep at 9. I'm not going to be doom scrolling on the phone. You see, it's like all of those things are changing because you're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go to the last one. The final one is lessons.
Lessons. Yeah. Lessons learned.
What are the lessons learned? And the biggest mistake a lot of times is they write the lessons down, but they don't live by them. And I've done that. I've been guilty of that. There probably are some lessons that I haven't, but you're going to get the lesson again if you don't actually live by them.
Oh yeah, true.
Okay, so let's reframe some of those lessons really quick. And why is this part so critical in learning how to succeed in the future?
I think 3 lessons learned from this practice. If we're going to talk about it, this was now a practice.
Yeah.
lessons learned was emotions are a great motivator.
Mm-hmm.
The anger, the embarrassment, the all those emotions that I said when I had to reflect have now turned into a motivation of I will finish.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It evolved.
lesson there is just reflect on those emotions, let them in, but let them do what they need to do.
Right.
I mean, you just say the frustration is one of the emotions that
I get a
it
lot.
sucks that you get a lot,
Yeah.
but you've also reframed that. You've
Mhm.
moved past that.
Exactly.
And so I think that right there is just the fuel to get you to do something else or the next thing.
So good. And what was the second lesson?
Second one was the fact that honestly, failure is probably going to help more people than constantly succeeding.
Yeah.
I think this failure now as a person can help family, can help friends, can help the people in the gym
Right.
when they see, man, he did fail,
Mm-hmm.
but yet he's still going, like he's not phased by it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that helps more people than if I came back and was like, oh man, I succeeded, I did 50 miles.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, okay, cool, but I didn't really help them. They're just like,
Yeah.
all right, cool, pat on the back, good job, like I'm proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think more people are like, well, he failed, he's okay with it, what can I do?
So good.
I think that's pretty powerful. I mean, that could be unpacked for a whole nother podcast, but I think that's pretty powerful right there.
Like one of the things, now that I think back, a sign of a really, really good coach, I mean, this could be reeled and chopped up and probably taken out of context. A sign of a really great coach is seeing a lot of more injured athletes in your classes. Not because you injured them, but because they're using their injuries and they're not letting it control them.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of and a lot of times, like people are gonna miscommunicate this thing, but a lot of the athletes that are coming into your classes, they didn't get injured in your classes. They got injured outside of this.
Mm-hmm.
But an indication that you're going the right path is those people are still coming in. And I'd probably argue it's because they've seen you injured.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they've seen you adapt.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you know you're doing something great. You're like, okay, cool. I'm being this person. I'm living this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these people coming in, regardless of their circumstance, because they're like, that guy knows what the environment is like. That guy knows how to train in that environment. Mm-hmm. And that guy knows a lot more lessons in this environment that I do that I want a little bit too.
Well, just even an example, one of the guys that hurt his back
came back in.
I mean, literally the next day he texts me saying, hey, just want to let you know I hurt my back. I was doing blah, 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 but I do want to come in and I do want to get in and I do want to, do this. And what can you help me with? What can I do instead of, because this hurts. And I mean, even today, he came in and you even said, how is your back healing so fast?
Yeah.
Like it's crazy on how fast it's healing. But again, it's because he has seen us get hurt and come back. Like we even talk about it. Kyler is one of our coaches and he is here with a boot on, still doing work. And I think that right there probably speaks even more volumes for the other guy, James, to come in and be like, well, dude, my back's hurt, but I'm not immobile. I can come in.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy how quickly he's changing. I'm like, he's walking normal now. Yeah. Most people are hobbling.
He was hobbling on Monday. It is now Saturday. And
he's like, I was like, you have a normal stride, dude. Right? Okay, what was your third lesson?
Third lesson, oh man, what was the third lesson?
I don't know.
The third lesson, let me check that.
Yeah, check your phone real quick. Because those lessons are
the fact that with failure, you almost get the opportunity to shed off a little bit of like your old self.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have kind of this old self, and going through that door of failure, you kind of get to shed that off and you become more of a resilient, better person.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That, like, I think I really want to make people aware that the resiliency has to come from that failure.
It is, yeah.
Resiliency doesn't come from success.
Mm-hmm.
But walking through that door, I think that you get the opportunity to kind of fluff that off, and then you become a different person coming through. And I guarantee you, I will be, and I am a different person
Yes.
since I failed and since I've
Mm-hmm.
walked through. Looking back, it's like, I don't know if I would be as happy
Yeah.
or joyful that I failed
Mm-hmm.
as I am now, because if I would have succeeded, I don't know if I would have been in the same space. But now
Yeah.
that I have failed, I've moved past that.
Yeah.
And now I've grown from that, just from that little bit right there.
I love how you touched up on that, because I
Yeah.
was explaining to one of our coaches. He was like, I just feel like an imposter. And I was like, bro, let me like give you the honest truth. You are.
Yeah.
Right? You are an imposter. But the moment you fail, you're going to unshed that new person. And that person is closer to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
People say imposter syndrome, but what they're really saying a lot of times, like, I'm afraid to fail in front of people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm afraid to see the person that reacts to that failure. It's like, I'm an imposter syndrome right now. The more I fail, the more I shed things out of my system. Same thing with you, right? So it's like, if you feel like you're an imposter in some way, maybe you should look at how you would handle failure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where the deficit is, because you currently is not your full potential.
Yeah.
Most people think like you're a fraud. I was like, no, everyone, like you're not even close to your potential. You have limitless potential.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you can uncover that is to constantly fail.
Well, we had this conversation with, like, was it 2 months ago, of me saying that I was like, I know that I'm a leader, but
Yeah.
I also need to lead more. And you were like, dude, you need to just take the next step and fail.
Yeah.
Like, teach something and fail at it. And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to. And you
Yeah.
were like, you have to. And I was like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Take that step and fail. And it's okay if you fail. Like,
Yeah.
and you even said, he goes, your potential is a leader.
Yeah.
He goes, you have a leadership potential. He goes, you even said, you need to take a step, though. You can't be a leader if you're not leading and failing.
Exactly.
And it was just one of those where it's like, okay.
He's calling me out again.
Yeah, calling me out. Like, I need to, I need to be okay with it. And again, like, I'm not okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to understand that, like, we don't just love, and failing's easy for us. It still stings. It's still painful. It's still also stresses you out too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you go into a thing where you're like, I probably am going to fail at this, it's going to stress you out.
Yeah.
But know that going through that door or breaking through that bubble, you fulfill more of the potential of who you actually are. Like, that should be motivation in itself.
So good.
But again, it's that duality. You still need to feel that stress, that scaredness to go through that process.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any different. It's just you get more accustomed to it.
That environment is that environment.
No, yeah.
So just to sum this all up, guys, understand the environment of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to have a lot of those embedded negative emotions, and none of those emotions are really that bad, right? And then after you let it in, it will start to like turn into something different. It'll eventually reframe into some progress, or in my case, frustration became profit, right? So a mess becomes a message. You know, that's why all these things come in, because people are experiencing that. And then the second thing is learn how to train in that environment. And the way you can train for that environment is to fail fast. Yeah. Right? Like, fail first. Test the test. Like, don't wait to take the test. Like, test the test and put some barriers around. Don't go careless about it. And then once you test the test, practice what breaks in the test. That's where you should be spending a majority of your time, right? And then the other part to it is if you don't have faith around failing, like, it's going to be a hard road. You need to have faith in the process of failure, and it needs to be something that's constantly cultivated, just like daily training, daily nutrition intakes. You need a daily way to dose up your hope. Yeah. Right? Which is huge. And then the third one is how to really reframe it from the acronym that we used, which is FAIL.
Yeah.
What are those feelings? Can
Mhm.
you accept it? What are the actions that you did past? And then look at it like just in a neutral perspective.
Yeah.
And then use the improvement part of this. What can I improve for this next time?
Yeah.
Because the test was just practice, right?
Yep.
And then the final one is like, can I get some lessons from this? And then can I live by it?
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Right? So, guys, if you guys like this episode, you're going to like, I don't know where my hands are. You're going to like this episode where Coach Madison and I talked about how to stay consistent, especially when it comes to fitness. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.